Venus couldn't be more different from Earth, but being almost the same size. Venus, one of the first planets discovered by the ancients, is a common and highly bright sight in the night sky, ranking as the third brightest object in the sky. In fact, if you know where to look, it can be seen in broad daylight. Venus observation dates back to prehistoric times over the Earth. However, there is one exception. Venus's movement causes it to seem discontinuous. It vanishes when in close proximity to the Sun. This is an illusion, but it led certain societies, especially the early ancient Greeks, to believe that Venus was two separate objects, a morning and an evening star rather than one. Others figured it out, and the Babylonians recorded their opinion that it was the same thing on cylinder seals. The Babylonians had an intriguing moniker for Venus, which translates as Divine Lady of the Red Heavens, referring to the color of the sky when Venus is plainly seen at dusk and dawn. The scientific study of Venus also began early. In the 2nd century, Ptolemy correctly assumed that Venus and Mercury were placed between the Earth and the Sun. Unsurprisingly, modern studies began with Galileo and his telescope. He noted that Venus has phases like the Moon, therefore he confirmed a sun-centric model. To show this prominently, it has to be inside Earth's orbit, as Mercury is. The 18th century saw the discovery of Venus' atmosphere, which was observed scattering sunlight, but no one knew what that atmosphere looked like. After that, little was known about Venus until the 20th century. But once it started, it moved swiftly. Spectroscopic measurements show that Venus' rotation must be extremely slow, and ultraviolet observations in the 1920s indicated that Venus' atmosphere was not as featureless as it appears in visible and infrared light. Astronomer Frank Ross was able to deduce from these observations that Venus has a deep yellow atmosphere and a cloud deck, which was mostly right. Some people in the early 20th century saw Venus as a sweltering rainforest world teeming with life, but this was not the case when we visited. The Soviet Union made the first attempt with Venera 1, the first interplanetary space journey, but the spacecraft fell black while en route. Mariner 2 was successfully launched in 1962, ushering in the contemporary era of data collection on Venus, which revealed that it was a totally different, highly terrible world than anything else in the solar system. In many ways, Venus remains mysterious, owing to the fact that it has the densest atmosphere of any terrestrial planet in the solar system. At its surface, the pressure is an incredible 92 atmospheres. This is sufficient to convert the environment at that level into a supercritical fluid state, which has qualities intermediate between a gas and a liquid state. Venus is around the same size as Earth, and there appears to be extensive evidence of volcanic activity on its surface, which is likely currently active in some manner. In the past, this could occur on a large scale, with Venus cracking apart and spewing massive sheets of lava, resurfacing major portions of its surface. We're not sure if it still can. Venus' atmosphere is primarily carbon dioxide and nitrogen, with a persistent cloud deck dominated by sulfuric acid, resulting in a severe greenhouse effect and a surface temperature of around 867 Fahrenheit or 464 degrees Celsius. Venus has a year of 224.7 days and a day that is 117 days long by Earth standards. Venus also rotates backwards, unlike most other bodies in the solar system, and it does so slowly, which is where the interesting oddity of Venus begins. Venus could only have rotated in this direction because the dense atmosphere slowed and reversed its velocity over time. Dense, dynamic atmospheres can produce odd effects. But there are a few more outstanding mysteries about Venus. The first is known as the ashen light, and I have seen it through a telescope. If this phenomenon is real, it manifests as a very weak glow from Venus' dark side during the crescent phase. This phenomena has existed for a very long time. The first observation of it was made in 1638, and it has occasionally been noted, but not always, and no one has ever confirmed that it exists. Opinions have always differed on this. An observation from 1643, for example, caused the observer to attribute it to optical effects within his telescope. William Herschel reported on it, as did Senior Patrick Moore in a more current context. However, at times, Extremely intentional attempts to examine the ashen light failed, particularly when the moon obstructed Venus, only revealing the black side. However, at times, like as in my personal sighting, it was very distinct. More crucially, the Keck telescope detected a very weak green glow. Astronomers speculated that it could be due to ultraviolet from the sun splitting C02 molecules into carbon monoxide and oxygen, which then combines to form O2, which emits green light but not enough to account for what Keck saw. While smaller telescopes observing at the same time saw nothing, possibly due to the dimness. Another option is related to Venus' magnetic field. It has one, but not like the Earth. It's extremely weak, and rather than being formed inside within the planet, it's caused by the solar wind and Venus ionosphere reacting. That should allow in much more cosmic radiation than Earth receives, potentially resulting in cloud-to-cloud lightning and a brief glow. Another alternative is an auroral glow that is distinct from the auroras of the other solar systems. We know Venus has lightning, which adds to the enigma. We just don't know how much, and if this is the cause, it will require a lot of lightning. Furthermore, the Pioneer Venus probe detected a strong air glow, which could have been caused by lightning. However, other spacecraft equipped to hunt for lightning visually did not notice it, implying that the lightning is too deep in the atmosphere to observe from orbit. It has also been hypothesized that the ashen light, as seen through telescopes, is an optical illusion created by the brain after witnessing a bright crescent and painting in a ghost. This could explain my personal sighting for all I know. It was visual, and I didn't have a camera on hand to capture it. But there's one last thing. A coronal mass ejection from the sun struck Venus in 2012, and a strong green emission line was discovered during the study. It has been observed since these events, but not necessarily following solar flares in general, indicating that it is a form of aurora caused by solar CMEs. However, this is simply the beginning of Venus secrets. The next is much bigger and incorporates an unusual fact about Venus. While its surface is nothing like Earth, there is a layer in the upper atmosphere that is roughly equivalent in temperature and pressure to Earth at sea level. This has sparked proposals for future colonization of Venus' atmosphere rather than its surface, using floating dwellings and balloons. The advantage is that shredding your spacesuit in this layer of Venus atmosphere would not be a major disaster or practically certain death, as it would be in most other parts of the solar system. However, this pleasant situation raises another possibility. Could Venus support microbial life? In principle, yes, and there are two possibilities for how this occurred. One theory is that life originated elsewhere, with Earth being a likely contender for colonizing Venus' atmosphere via panspermia. The alternative possibility is that it is native Venusian life that evolved during a hypothetical past when Venus had liquid water seas and the same general conditions as Earth when life first appeared. The interesting thing about Venus is that there are several indicators that something is going on in its upper atmosphere which could signify biology. Overall, these signals outperform analogous hints at Mars and Europa. Venus may be the most promising contender in the solar system for life beyond Earth. The earliest sign of this has been observed for more than a century. Venus' upper atmosphere contains dark streaks visible in ultraviolet light, which absorb UV more efficiently than the areas immediately surrounding them. And it's really obvious, with a streak absorbing 40% more than the clouds just next to it. There is no known mechanism for this, other than an unknown material performing it. Okay, some unidentified component of the cloud deck. However, these streaks evolve and change in an abnormal manner, more akin to biology than the action of wind and cloud, and no chemical has yet been identified as related with this occurrence. It does, however, superficially mimic the patterns that microbiological life on Earth exhibits in terms of blossoming and movement. However, that isn't the only mystery here. By far the most successful missions to Venus were those of the Soviet Union, which made repeated landings on the surface. These missions identified elongated particles of unknown composition in Venus's lower cloud layers. All they could tell was that they were roughly the size of a bacterium and elongated like some species of bacteria seen on Earth. The problem is that Earth microorganisms cannot survive in this environment, thus it remains unknown what those particles are. However, there are methods to imagine alternate biochemistries that could function here, but there is nothing like them on watery Earth. It is widely claimed that Venus contains very little water. There is none on its surface, and the atmosphere contains only trace amounts of water vapor. but it does include liquid in the form of sulfuric acid. Recent research suggests that sulfuric acid may act as a solvent for life, maintaining life in that cloud deck. One thing that has been developed here is an armored microorganism that protects itself using a sulfur-based compound called S8. S8 is a ring-shaped polymer that is resistant to sulfuric acid, and it has been identified in Venus' atmosphere for unknown reasons. A further puzzle is the detection of phosphine gas on Venus. This is one of the most disputed discoveries in planetary science. The latest update is that, while the claim was called into doubt and subjected to a large debunk here on YouTube, a debunk that incorrectly interpreted a lot of science, the detection has stood up. The quantities of phosphine are far lower than previously reported, yet they are abnormal and, according to decades of laboratory research, are not created by lightning or any other known means. However, while phosphine is a gas linked with living, it can also be produced by nature without biology, so it is merely one of several indicators suggesting Venus may be a viable area to look for microbial life independent of Earth. Venus is an enticing realm to explore. Alright folks, this video ends here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel to receive regular, in-depth examinations of the fascinating, strange, and unknown parts of our incredible universe.